Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, Canada Missing Project, copyrighted edition for a video channel. And we're with the executive producer of the show, the star of the show, Huck. Oh, she's a good girl. She's a good girl. And she loves her scratches. Under her chin and the top of her head make her very happy. Yeah, she's a good girl. Oh, that's a good girl. Yeah, she's a good. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, you're a good girl. Yeah, you're a good girl. So, big yawn. Big yawn. Been a rough day, man. So, we're going to get into the program because we've got a ways to go. And I always encourage you, because you're way smarter than me, I always encourage you to send in any missing person report that fits our profile. You send that to missing411@yahoo.com, and we will get it and we'll review it. It's impossible for me to cover all the cases all over because I don't hear about them. And the only way we can hear about them is from you. Oh yeah, we're shaking things up here at the Missing 411 studios under Huck. She said, "Dad, your goatee is getting a little shabby. Shave it off." Following directions from the madam, I shaved it off. So we'll see what you think. Now, one of you sent in a fascinating article that applies directly to what we talked about. Now, you can watch all of my movies, all of my documentaries on Tubi right now. TUBI. Missing 411, Missing 411 The Hunted, Missing 411 The UFO Connection. Now, this is an article that was in the American Journal of Modern Physics. So you can say what you want to about UFOs, but when a Journal of Modern Physics says something, you better be listening. It says, apparent detection via new telescopes with concave lenses of otherwise invisible terrestrial entities. By using telescopes with concave lenses known as Santilli telescopes, trademark and patent pending by the U.S. publicly traded company Thunder Energies, we review preceding evidence for the apparent existence of antimatter galaxies, antimatter asteroids, and antimatter cosmic rays. Independently from these astrophysical detections, we present for the first time evidence of their apparent existence of entities in our terrestrial environment that are solely visible via telescopes with concave lenses, while being invisible to our eyes in our conventional Galileo telescopes with convex lenses, which entities leave dark images in the background of digital cameras attached to these Santilli telescopes. Many of you know we cannot see in the infrared zone. There's many other zones that we cannot hear and cannot see in. So to think that we are seeing everything that exists in our world daily, that would be impossible. And to think that we are the big dogs on the world that hear and see everything, that's an ignorant statement. These entities are here called invisible terrestrial entities of the first kind, or dark ITE. We then present also for the first time evidence for the apparent existence in our terrestrial environment of additional entities that are also visible to telescopes with concave lenses while being invisible to our eyes and to conventional telescopes with convex lenses, which entities leave bright images. These additional entities are called invisible terrestrial entities of the second kind. It is pointed out that both types of entities generally move in the night sky over sensitive areas, and their behavior generally suggests unauthorized surveillance. The paper has been motivated by the significance of diversification of the collected evidence, as well as available independent confirmations that warrant systematic inspections of the skies over our sensitive civilian, industrial, and military installations via telescopes with concave lenses as to detect possible unauthorized surveillance. So I don't care what you think about that. I'm trying to keep you informed. Now, if you are an informed person, you know that over New Jersey, in the last several weeks, there have been a series of UFO observations. They're calling them drones, but they're not really drones in the conventional sense. And they're not really saying what they truly might be. So keep an eye on that. Now, many of you have watched my show called Vanished. You can watch it on Amazon. It's owned by the History Channel, not by me. They contracted with me to make a 2-hour special on history, and they have placed it up on Amazon for you to watch for, I think it's $2. The show is about a series of disappearances. And much of the show was filmed on Mount Shasta. Yeah, that 14,000-foot mountain in Northern California. It is a pristinely gorgeous place. And when you get near the summit, you can see things out there that are just ungodly beautiful. And we filmed up on near the summit of the mountain for several days. We filmed in the city of Mount Shasta for several days. We spent time flying over the area in helicopters. It's a very detailed investigation into a series of disappearances on Mount Shasta. And as I stated in that segment, there have been a series of disappearances around Mount Shasta that are extremely unusual that I've written about in my books. Now, speaking of books, before I get off that, you buy any 2 books between now and December 12th, and you will get our free Liberty hat. And why is that important? Because we've never offered that before. Just buy any 2 411 books, pay for them, and you don't have to do anything else. We'll put the hat in the bag. And that's only for USA customers. And our website address is NA, like North America, NABigfootsearch.com. Go to the online store. So getting back to Mount Shasta. I had spent a long time at Mount Shasta before we ever filmed there. Getting the background details on the missing people, getting details on Bigfoot in that area. Oh, there's a lot of sightings in, around, on Mount Shasta about Bigfoot. And there's a steep Native American heritage in that area. Now, why am I talking to you about that? Well, because today's missing person deals with somebody missing in Mount Shasta. And while many of you will say, probably a criminal case, you might be right. But it's still a missing person case. And it's a very unusual missing person case, so we're going to cover it because a mom out there is struggling with the disappearance. And I have a lot of compassion for that. The man's name is Davohnte Morgan. Some say it's Davohnte Van Morgan. 29 years old. He went missing May 5th, 2020, not that long ago, at 9:45 in the morning in Mount Shasta, California. For his entire life, he lived with his mom in the Haight-Ashbury section of San Francisco. Some of you like his birth date. Here it is, March 15th, 1992. March 15th, 92. You can go look it up. He was employed by a company called Friel Foods in San Francisco. He spent his entire time living in the same house in the Haight. His mom said some interesting things about Davohnte. She said that he was always afraid that he was going to be abducted or taken. And he usually refused to leave the house to go to another city or go to another area that he didn't know. I find that fascinating because there's other people that I've known that have had that same feeling and then later disappeared as well. In fact, there's an X-Files episode about that. The mom's name is Terry Barnes. She had 2 other kids. She said that before Davohnte went away, he was slightly depressed over the death of his cousin. And the funeral for the cousin was on May 3rd, 2020. Now, Davohnte had a girlfriend. Let me show you this. This is Davohnte. Davohnte was a good kid. A good young man. Didn't get into trouble. Worked hard. Loved his mom, loved his family. And of all the kids in the family, Davohnte was the one child that would always go to church with his mom on Sunday. Very religious. So Davohnte had this older girlfriend, much older. And at one point, Davohnte and the girlfriend ended up in Lake Tahoe. He called his brother and said that the girlfriend had given him too many drinks, and that kind of had coerced him into going to Tahoe. Well, one of the dreams his mom said that Davohnte always had was that he was going to become a preacher. Noble cause. And that's one of the reasons maybe why he went to church. Now let's hold the story for a second. Mount Shasta, the city, at the base of Mount Shasta. Idyllic city. I've spent a lot of time there. It's known for its spiritual reawakening of people. A lot of shops with crystals, healing information. A lot of people have offsites and lodges there that do seminars along those lines. I should state that in the many weeks I spent in Mount Shasta, I never felt uncomfortable. Felt completely safe. We got to know some of the people at the businesses. I personally got to know some of the great people that worked at the small newspaper in town. One super nice lady that worked for the paper helped me out a lot. In fact, I took her to one site where she met an individual who had a Bigfoot sighting. My time there, before I filmed there for Vanished, was a mixture of missing people and Bigfoot. The two topics didn't intervene, but I was there for both, and a Native American understanding of both. Now, Mount Shasta City has a very small police department. I think it has 8 people. The surrounding area is patrolled by the sheriff, with a much larger force and a monstrous area to patrol. But a small police department is very handcuffed in their ability to do complex investigations. Understand that before we go further. So Davohnte was up in Lake Tahoe, came back to the Bay Area with his girlfriend, and said that she had thrown away Davonte's phone and broke it. The last ping on the phone was in Oakland, California, just prior to them leaving to go to Mount Shasta. Now, this was a big awakening because Davohnte had never really traveled outside of that Haight-Ashbury section of San Francisco, so people were surprised. So he's going to Mount Shasta. His girlfriend drives him there. The girlfriend, much older, and a single mother of older kids. They left immediately after that cousin's funeral. And on the night of May 4th, while in Mount Shasta, Davohnte's girlfriend took some video of Davohnte appearing to be under the influence. She made some statements about the mushrooms up here are really good, and when you blend them or put them in a blunt, people don't even know. And she sent this video of Davohnte under the influence to his brother, and she was laughing and giggling. Nobody quite understood the purpose of the video, except the girlfriend later stated that the intent in going to Mount Shasta was she and Davohnte were going to climb the mountain. Let's stop there for a second. Nobody climbs Mount Shasta unless you're in really good shape. On the scale of reaching a 14er, it's pretty easy. But I'm telling you for a fact, if you've never been above 12,000 feet hiking straight up, you have no clue about how hard it is. And unless you're in good aerobic condition, you're not going to do it. So I'm not quite sure what the girlfriend was thinking, because Davohnte had always lived at sea level. I'm just saying. But she said that the climb up the mountain would be the spiritual reawakening for Davohnte, and that would allow him to become a preacher. Well, that night of May 4th, the girlfriend says that they got into an argument, she and Davohnte. And sometime in the early morning hours, he left and said he was going to go for a walk. Left the hotel they were staying in Mount Shasta City. And the girlfriend says that just before sunlight, she wanted to get up and see the sun rise. So she got out and took a walk around the city. Seems pretty normal to now. Well, at about 9:45 in the morning, she's walking back towards the hotel on a street, one street over from their hotel, and sees Davohnte. They make eye contact, nothing is said, and she goes back to the hotel. Now, I reviewed all kinds of material for this. And the mother said that she's convinced that the girlfriend knows what happened to Davohnte, because he never made it back to the room. And the girlfriend eventually reported him missing to the Mount Shasta police. The mother said that the girlfriend was so distraught and broken up that she had to have her older boys drive to Mount Shasta to get her. Now, Davohnte's mom said she has spoke with Mount Shasta police several times. And she said at one point they said that they reviewed CCTV footage from various shops along the main street in Mount Shasta. And they said that they saw him walking towards the outskirts of the city. And they dropped it. Well, the mom called Mount Shasta City and kept saying what they were doing, any new leads, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, they looked at more footage weeks later. And they said that they found footage of him walking back into the city, towards the center of the city, 15 minutes later. And the mom said she was working under the understanding that maybe he had walked into oblivion, but now he was walking back into the city, which sort of justifies what his girlfriend said. Now, the mother said that the girlfriend was giving away Davohnte's stuff that he had left in the room. She found that very odd. Well, truthfully, I find that very odd. The mother said that the girlfriend is not normal, is odd, in her words, not mine. In the ongoing conversations that Davohnte's mom had with Mount Shasta police, they told her that they only have 8 officers. And she asked them if they would share their information with the California State Department of Justice. Now, this is a brilliant move. California DOJ has investigators all over the state, has many more resources than little Mount Shasta City. Mount Shasta says they wouldn't share that information with DOJ. That bothers me. Bothers me a lot. Why not? Everybody in law enforcement's here for the same thing. Find people, solve crimes, put people in jail. Eventually, Mount Shasta told Davohnte's mom to stop calling them and stop harassing them. Ooh, not a good thing to tell people. If they're harassing you and they're bothering you, it may be because you're not doing anything. Under those type of circumstances, here's what the police department should do. Invite her in. Sit her down. Explain the resources you have and the resources you don't have. Explain what your job is. Explain that there's so many officers working patrol, and maybe if they have one detective, I'd be surprised. And how many things that one detective has to follow up on. How many people are missing in the city? How many crimes occur in the city? But don't allow people to get angry at you because you're not doing enough. A mother's job is to find her son. Now, the mom said part of Mount Shasta City is not safe for blacks. Again, I've never heard that. I never felt that. Just down the road, south on I-5, there's a town called Dunsmuir. I grew up going to that town, staying in that town. There were a lot of black people. Most of them used to work for the railroad. I never felt anything uncomfortable there between blacks and whites or in Mount Shasta City. So I'm not sure where the mom's getting that. Now, did Davohnte decide to come back into town and then to take off? Maybe go up into the mountain? I don't know. Did he catch a ride out of town? I don't know. Was he abducted? I don't know. What we do know is Davohnte is not to be found. His accounts have never been touched. He's never recontacted his mom. When he was walking around the city, he didn't have a phone. Now, what was the riff between Davohnte and his girlfriend that night? Well, it turns out the riff was about Davohnte's old girlfriend. He had an old girlfriend for a long time, and they were still friends. And they would still keep in contact with each other. Even though Davohnte was loyal to this present older lady, this older lady appeared to be very jealous of this younger lady, which may have been one of the reasons she broke the phone, because he was keeping in contact with her. So that may have been the core part of the argument that night. In my humble opinion, I think the FBI needs to get involved in this case for human rights violations. If this was a hate crime, they can get involved. And I think Mount Shasta City needs to turn the case over to the California State Department of Justice. Now, maybe they're embarrassed because the case file is a wreck or there's very little in there. I have no idea. I have no idea. But I can tell you for a fact, there's a lot of people missing from Siskiyou County around Mount Shasta. A lot. And many of these cases are not easy solves. A lot of people missing from campsites, missing on hikes. It's a very, very strange place. Last thing about Mount Shasta. Mount Shasta has a very long history of UFO sightings. And not just UFO sightings, I mean, the weather is strange on Mount Shasta. The people missing in and on and around Mount Shasta are strange. One of the cases I highlighted on Mount Shasta was a man was with two other friends. And they said, hey, you take off before us because we'll catch you. We'll take care of the campsite, but you go. And they looked at him as he walked up, and there's nothing there. There's just fields of white. snow, a little snow, but most of it was ground. No place to go. And they saw him take off, and they saw him headed towards the right place where you check in with a ranger before you summit. They said they got the campground together, and one of the guys is a retired American Airlines pilot, and the other one is one of his best friends. These people are stellar individuals. Well, they get the campsite together, and they take off, and they can't see him because he went over a knoll. Well, as they get to the check-in station to summit, the ranger says, no, nobody by that description is here. In fact, there's only that man up there, and they looked, and they said, that's not him. Well, the weird thing is, that man just completely disappeared that they were following their friend. And there's no place to go, folks. There's no place to go. Long story short is that the search and rescue for that individual lasted weeks. And the head of search and rescue for the state of California told me, he said, Dave, that man is not on that mountain. We flew a Cobra helicopter to the top, dropped searchers like a spider web that came down. We didn't miss anything. Now, he's not on that mountain. He may be in the mountain, but he's not on. His statement, not mine. And what he meant by in, I hear you, Huck, is that there's a long history about people who supposedly live in Mount Shasta called Lemurians, Lemurians. Look it up. And the Lemurians are an interesting story behind them. So, Davohnte Morgan, 29 years old, missing May 5th, 2020, in Mount Shasta City. Again, mothers deserve a full-fledged effort to find their son. And let me show you some more here. This is Mount Shasta. This is Mount Shasta City. This is Dunsmuir that I was telling you about, just down the road. And this is Interstate 5 that takes you up into Oregon. This is just south of the Oregon border. Another picture of Davohnte. And another picture of Davohnte. Again, this man, this is his California driver's license photo. This man didn't get into trouble. Good soul, hard worker, kept his nose clean, wanted to be a preacher. If you live in Northern California and you know something about the case, please contact Mount Shasta City Police. It would be greatly appreciated. Be safe, be kind. It's Kindness Revolution. Paulides out.